All right. Second. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Older Vermonters Caucus. Today we have Treasurer Pichak, who's running a little bit late. We'll be here to talk about Vermont Saves and Paid
leave.
and paid leave. And then we'll have some questions and answers around the work that AARP is doing. So we've got a great group here in the room today. This is awesome to see so many people here at the Older Vermonters Caucus, and of course, everyone online. So I just wanted to start with a quick update. H721 that looks at Medicare savings. It's a bill that we've been working on for kind of years. Passed out of the Healthcare Committee last week. This is really good. And today, Ways and Means took up the bill and are looking for a funding source for it. It will go on to appropriations later in the week and be on the floor next week. So this is really a great step forward, especially in a year where budgets are so tight to even have moving it this far along. This is really going to help a lot of rural Vermonters who are mostly women who, when they turn 65 and transition, if they're on Medicaid and go to Medicare, this is really going to help them. And there's a great story on VPR if you want to get some background information on this. We've also had a couple of Older Vermonter Caucus where we've been talking about with Mike Fisher from the Vermont Health Advocate. So yeah, it will be really good to see this move forward. This is a bill that's been incorporated into 721, which has a lot of other stuff in it. But the key provision that I've always been interested in and been following is around the Medicare savings and how we increase the eligibility so people don't fall through the cracks. And this will really help us, especially in rural Vermont, draw down a lot more federal dollars to help people with their health care. So thank you. All right. So I don't know if anyone else has any announcements they'd like to make before we get started here. Anything they see moving in legislation, any concerns they have, or anything that's kind of come up? Is anybody online that wants to weigh in on this? But yeah.
I'm Representative Mary Howard, and I have been in the legislature for 4 terms, and I served on the General Housing and Military Affairs Committee, and then it got changed to General and Housing. The paid family leave bill was in my committee, and we worked very hard on that bill, and we were so hopeful that it would pass. We took testimony from over 70 people. We had an evening meeting, and the one person's testimony really touched me. It was the young woman who said that she planned her child's birth on a long weekend so she could get back to work and not lose her job. And that is wrong.
Yeah.
I personally couldn't take family leave when my husband was ill because I didn't work enough hours for the state. I can't tell you how disappointed I was when we were not able to override the veto. So I am hopeful, really hopeful, that we can finally get paid family leave sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Has anything changed this session that might encourage you?
Well, I don't know. It's not, the bill is not in my committee anymore. And I think there has been discussion about it, but right now it's mostly, housing and, the motel situation.
Will there be a change of personnel maybe, or a change of content?
Oh, well.
And to that
What I'd
point,
like to say, but I won't.
and to that point, Representative Wood and I worked on the Older Vermonters Act for 5 years before we got it. So these things do take time. Office of Child Advocate was another piece of legislation that I worked on. I think that took 5 years too, to really move it forward. And Representative Howard is correct. We were really close, just at a veto override on that one. So it's pretty rare stuff gets that close and doesn't pass. So anyways,
That's it.
just got to play the long game,
That's it.
especially over there. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering if maybe we could take a moment and have the lawmakers who are in the room introduce themselves, just so folks, can see a lot of these folks who are here, their constituents are here. So I'd love the opportunity to maybe.
Yeah,
make the
or why don't we
connection.
just, why don't we just go right around and people say their name and what town they're from, and you're a representative. When we get to you, you can say what town you represent.
That's awesome.
All right, well, I'm Dan Noyce. I represent Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere, and I serve on the Human Services Committee.
I'm Mary Howard and I represent Rutland District 6 and I serve on the General Housing Committee.
Nice.
Allison Joyle. I am not a representative. I work for Vermont Center for Independent Living.
I'm Charlie Glisserman. I'm the advocacy director at AARP Vermont, and I live in Burlington.
Breck Bowden, live in Burlington, and I'm the advocacy volunteer coordinator for AARP Vermont.
I'm Linda Bowden. Hello, everybody on the screen. I'm the volunteer state president for AARP, living in Burlington.
Steve Fenner, Barry City.
Evelyn Comstock, I'm from Underhill, Vermont.
Francis Comstock, I'm from Underhill, Vermont.
Lisa White from Berrytown, Vermont.
Representative Kate McCann from here in Montpelier.
Susan April from Waterbury Center.
I'm Bill April, Waterbury Center, take care of, involved with fraud watch and AARP, as well as the political action over here.
Sharon, excuse me, Sharon Underwood. I'm from Middletown Springs.
Hello, Robert Pierce. I live in Berrytown and I'm here representing Central Vermont Council on Aging.
Oh, hi, Laura McDonough. I'm the communications director with AARP Vermont.
Emmett Avery with the advocacy intern.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Ford, I'm associate state director for AARP Vermont, and I live in Montpelier. Can't see there, at least a few.
Grant Jericho and Underhill.
I'm starting here. Karen Dolan. I'm a representative from Essex Junction. And I sit on House Judiciary.
Lori Houghton, representative also from Essex Junction, and I chair the House Health Care Committee.
Mary Hayden, Vermont Association of Area Agencies on Aging, live in Berry City.
Hi, I'm Jessica Brunstead. I'm a representative and represent the area of Shelburne and St. George. And I'm on the House Human Services Committee with Representative Noyce.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Wood. Hi, Bill and Susan. I'm chair of the House Human Services Committee, and it's nice to see so many people here. And if you traveled through the snow squall that we just had, congratulations on getting here safely. I guess some people on the interstate were not quite so lucky. So, anyway, it's nice to see everybody. And I want to do a shout out to Dan just for a moment, because Dan has been steadfast in his organization and his continued presence for older Vermonters in the State House. And he initiated this Older Vermonters Caucus. I worked on it for a few years, and I just can't tell you that older Vermonters do not have a better advocate than Representative Noyce in the State House. So.
I definitely cannot do this alone. I'm just one of 180 people over there trying to help people. So I need all the help I can get. So
We appreciate it.
Yeah. Every time.
Very much.
yeah.
And Representative Austin just came in.
Yeah. You want to just introduce yourself real quick?
Sure, I'm Representative Austin. I am on the education team. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Awesome.
And did you want to do the?
Yeah, we can do people online. If you want, if I found an easy way to do this, everyone put your hand up, introduce yourself, and then put your hand down. Then you'll know who hasn't been introduced. You can just call on the next person. That works. Worked on one call I was on. So yeah, put your hand up, raise your hand, and then you introduce yourself, and we'll start with Honor.
Hi, everybody. I'm Honor Horton, and I am with Hunger Free Vermont, and we're celebrating that S215 to launch the Restaurant Meals Program in Vermont, which would serve people over age 60 in particular, passed out of Senate Health and Welfare last week.
Just, I think the best thing to do is people just speak up and then put your hand down. Or I can call on people. How about that? Hey, go ahead. Right across the top.
Hi, everybody. I'm Meg Polite. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director for the Alzheimer's Association. Really happy to be here. Really pleased that you included the faces of dementia family caregivers in the report that you put out, AARP. That was super helpful. And anyone who wants to come back, we'll be doing our Advocacy Day next Thursday, the 28th at the State House.
Molly.
Hello, I'm Molly Dugan and I'm with Cathedral Square. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Humphrey and I'm the Executive Director of HANDS, and we get food to folks 50 and over struggling with food insecurity. Thank you so much for everything. It's a lot of work.
Glad you're here. Haley.
I am Kylie Kuiper. I'm the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman at Vermont Legal Aid. Thank you.
Glenn.
Hi, I'm Glenn McRae. I'm on the board of AgeWell, and I'm facilitating the writing of an age-friendly plan for the city of Burlington.
Great. Michelle?
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Mahikoa. I do nutrition outreach for Central Vermont Council on Aging.
Brad.
I'm Rick New. I'm the community relations person at the Center on Aging at the University of Vermont.
Right. I guess Michelle. Michelle or Teresa? Oh, there's Michelle. I saw you go off mute.
I already spoke and I forgot to lower my hand.
No
I
worries.
apologize.
Teresa.
Good afternoon, Teresa Ojala. I don't have a camera. I apologize for that. I hope to very soon. I live in Barrie. I am the clinical manager for Express Care in Berlin for CVMC, and I'm a board member of CVCOA and People's Health and Wellness. Thank you.
Great. Glad you're here. Hey, anybody else I forgot? Want to introduce themselves? All right, Matthew.
Yes, my name is Matthew LaFleur. I use he, him pronouns. I'm actually, not just a supporter of everybody here, but I'm actually a statewide representative of everybody across the Vermont statewide. I have many titles, many acronyms, but for one, I'm actually a member of UVM One Care Vermont Partnership of Vermont statewide. So literally, this involves the elderly, care. So yes, I'm glad to be here.
Great. Thanks for being here. All right. I think I got everybody. Luba, did you go? Oh, you're muted. Sorry. All right. Okay. So we have some questions to kind of get started with. That Charlie wrote up. You wanna start with some of those? We can start, or you want me to, or?
Sure. I'm happy to get us kicked off if you want. So there are discussion questions scattered around the tables. I can deliver some on the outer corners of the room. And this is really just to get the conversation started. I think we can use it as an opportunity for the lawmakers in the room to share some of their priorities, the things that they're really proud of that they've worked on, as well as the attendees in the room about, what issues they really care about and want to see action on. So the first question here is, healthcare, housing, and transportation are important issues that impact older adults. What are the best ways for the state to address these pressing issues? And what policy or funding priorities should the legislature consider on them? I don't know if there's anyone who's a brave soul who wants us to get us started here.
I'm gonna volunteer Chair Houghton.
Okay.
And by the way, I did talk about 721 when we first got started and where it was, but please, I would love to hear your take on where it is and how it's now in the Ways and Means Committee, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So we did pass out 721, which we're calling the Expansion Act of 2024. And specific to older Vermonters is the increase in the eligibility for Medicare Savings Program. So that is the wraparound program when someone moves from Medicaid into Medicare. Right now, that's a big cliff for people who have to pay over $2,000 a year when they didn't have to on Medicaid for premiums. And so the MSP right now is at 100% of poverty level, and our bill is 190% of poverty level. And so it's about a $15 million investment by the state to draw down about a $40 million investment from the federal government. So we've had broad support on that. I don't think anyone is against it. I know Human Services put it in their budget letter also to support it, so I appreciate that. And I feel pretty good about us moving it forward. It is right now in Ways and Means. Just, two other quick things that are in there. If you know people, you can let it for the Medicaid expansion piece. Having kids right now are off Dr. Dinosaur when they turn 19. We're asking to keep them on till they're 21. We can do that within our state plan today. And then pregnant individuals have coverage up to, I think, 207% of the poverty level. We're asking that to go up to 312%. And then we have a study, technical analysis, to look at raising everyone. So our goal is to get everyone up to a poverty level of 312%. So basically saying all Vermonters can have the same access as a youth on Dr. Dinosaur. So that is probably the biggest thing that has come out impacting older Vermonters. We also passed out 766, which has to do with prior authorizations and some things around step therapy. I know Medicare doesn't require a lot of prior authorizations, but they do in some cases. So what we're trying to do is just align things across all payers. I'm trying to think what else. So I would say those are our biggest things. And I would love to hear what other things we should be focusing on for all of you in regards to healthcare. So I'll leave it at that and ask those questions.
Can I just ask a question of interest or clarification? Am I correct that the dynamic that's driving that Medicaid to Medicare is that people's salaries have been going up a little bit, but that threshold was, the salary threshold was decided a long time ago, and that it's inflation of people's salaries that are crossing that threshold into Medicare, or am I misunderstanding?
No, so what, I'm sorry. So what it is from Medicaid to Medicare is, you have individuals who are Medicaid, very low income, 20,000 and less a year. And once you turn 65, you have to go to Medicaid.
Okay.
And when you go to Medicare, you have premiums you have to pay that you don't have in Medicaid. So that's the benefit cliff for that population.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, transportation is a big issue. Do people have specific questions or concerns around transportation? Yeah, Steve.
Now, transit has started to inform people who are regularized municipalities that because they are level funded in the transportation budget, that they anticipate service cuts here in Washington County the new fiscal year. Now, we already have limited service. We have no Sunday service, so that those of us who don't drive can't get to church. We getting here. Right now, they've restored the morning bus that goes from Barry to Montpelier to half-hour intervals, but then it goes to an hour and a quarter, and then it goes to an hour for the remainder of the day. Put it bluntly, our folks need more because obviously the number of people who can no longer drive is increasing every year.
Right.
And those of us who are lucky enough to live in Barry City do have access. But as we move out into the rural areas, there's really a dearth of transportation, which means people can't get to medical appointments, et cetera. Capstone has instituted a supplemental service called Gopher to try to fill in some of the gaps, especially into Barrytown and some of the other areas. But they are relying on volunteer drivers, and they're in experimental stage. We don't know where they're going. So we have some real issues about transportation.
I'm glad you brought up volunteer drivers. A few weeks ago, we had Nat Piper here from V-Trans, who was talking about the need for volunteer drivers. And if we can all collectively use our connections in the community to help spread the word, whether it's a front porch forum post or social media post, that they're always looking for volunteer drivers, and to make sure people know that the need is great and it hasn't come back after COVID. They haven't gotten back up to the level of volunteers they had before. So he sent me over some kind of like cut and paste boilerplate information you can send out that directs people to where they can volunteer around transportation, because there really is a great need for that.
I work at Jolly's and I hear a lot of deep conversations with my customers. And one of the conversations that I hear is that with the transportation in that area, you need to call ahead for a ride. But if you have an emergency, you're stuck because there's nobody there to pick you up. So you got to find a way to get to the hospital or whatever. That's not transportation. So there should be like an emergency transportation for in cases like that where you fall down and you can't get up or something.
Yeah.
Ambulances are way too expensive. Many people can't spend the amount they have to pay for an ambulance to get way up in Underhill area from Essex.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a couple $100 charge just to get you.
True, and we
can't walk, so
we actually have put forth some legislation around making sure that the reimbursement rates for ambulance services are adequate, so that, or at least moving in the right direction away from level funding, so that they can continue to exist in our state. So I know in Lamoille County, we hear quite a bit about it. So
yeah.
Just want to acknowledge that Treasurer Pichek has joined us. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no,
really
thank you for having me.
appreciate it. Glad you made it here.
Yeah.
So we've just been talking about issues that affect older Vermonters and legislation that's been happening in the State House. And it'd be great to hear from you on paid leave and the Vermont Saves program. So I'll turn it over to you now in case, because I'm sure you have a lot of other stuff going on today.
Well, thanks, Dan, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone. Hope you're enjoying your day in Montpelier. It's always, good for legislators to hear from folks from their community and hear what's on your minds. I think it's a really important part of the process. So that's great. And I see Representative McCann, and we were here like 3 years ago doing pension reform. And, we ended up in a very solid place on that, and retirement security, something even from those conversations that, was dear to me, but continues to be dear to me because it's so important that our seniors, whether they're in our pension systems as teachers or state employees or municipal workers or those that don't have the benefit of pensions have a secure retirement. And a lot of that work sort of bore out right in this room. So it's nice to harken back to that. But with Vermont Saves, that's something that the ARP has been very helpful to us in getting that legislation passed last year. And we had the benefit, I don't know, we certainly haven't worked on a piece of legislation that had been unanimous both in the House and the Senate. No opposition across the board. And I think that really speaks to the value that people saw in this program. Both Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Progressives, everyone supported this concept of providing access to retirement for working Vermonters. So with that success from a legislative standpoint last year, and I think that was right around the time that we spoke last time, right around now, we wanted to carry that legislative success over to our operational success and make sure we actually got the program stood up in a timely way, at the price tag that we expected stood up and at a cost that we hoped would be as minimal as possible for individuals. And we have really good news to report on that. We have hired a director, Becky Wasserman, who used to be over at Ledge Council. Some of the legislators in the room aren't so happy that we hired her. She's excellent and great and have a tremendous amount of confidence in her setting up the program. And she's done a lot of due diligence. She's worked with a lot of different vendors and a lot of different consultants. And we just decided last week, we wanted to do a state partnership. And just last week, we decided which state we're going to partner with, which is Colorado. And we'll make that more public soon enough. But by partnering with another state, we're able to set the program up so much more quickly than we anticipated, more efficiently, because Colorado is now partnered with Maine and with Delaware. So we'll be the third state. So they've done this before with other small states in the Northeast. And eventually at a lower price point, because the more states that band together and the more money that's under their consultant's contract, the lower the fees will get over time. So we no longer view any operational concerns with setting up Vermont Saves, and we will do it more quickly than we anticipated. So rather than it being in 2025, we believe it can be at the end of this year, 2024. It could even be earlier. I think the thing that we're going to run into is that we could set it up before anyone even knows what it is. So we want to make sure people are aware of what the program is and do a coordinated outreach and marketing campaign for both employers and employees, so that people are not caught off guard by it. So that's really our biggest concern now, is trying to not necessarily operationalizing it, but trying to make sure people are aware of it before it goes live. We have an advisory board now that is well represented across the state, from small business owners to payroll consultants to investment advisors. So we're getting good information as to how to fill out some of the parameters of the program. But do expect a pilot project sometime this summer to again try to facilitate sort of uptake and awareness, and then a go live date sometime in December of this year or January of next year, depending on when folks think was the best time to launch it. But we're really excited about that and still think thousands of people will have access to retirement, that services that they wouldn't have otherwise, and that we expect tens of thousands of people to sign up for this and start saving for their retirement. So something that's really, something that we're really excited about. And next year, I can't wait to tell you how many people are enrolled and how well it's going. And then the other point I know that Charlie wanted me to touch on was paid leave, which is something both in my old role and in this role we've been working on for some time. And in the paid leave bill, as passed by the House and is contemplated in the Senate, the Treasurer's Office would be responsible for setting up. That's my dog, Jetty. Sorry. He's a big fan of paid leave also. But we'd be responsible for setting up and running the paid leave program. So we said that we take on that responsibility. We think that's one of the critical linchpins. Is not just passing something, and that's just what we've done with Vermont Saves. It wasn't just passing something, but then operationalizing it and doing it in a way that was, fast, efficient, cost as few dollars as possible in terms of an operational standpoint. So that operational piece is so critical, and we were happy to do it. And if the bill passes, we're happy to take that on. I think it'll be a big challenge. It'll require us hiring a lot more people, but it's not something that we're going to shy away from. And we would take it on, head on. but one of the reasons I think that this time around, why I was so willing, I don't know if my staff was so willing, but why I was so willing to say that we would take it on is not even for the reasons that you probably most closely identified paid leave for, like individuals that had a child and need time off, which is obviously critical, or your own personal medical needs, which is critical. But, you start to think about a lot of us and, a lot of people I know that have older parents or older relatives who need care. So it's not so much some of the traditional things you think about, like parental or maternal leave or your own personal leave, but caring for a family member. In Vermont, we all know we're getting older. And one of the things that happens when we get older is we need more medical care and we need more family to care for us. And that was one of the motivating reasons for me to want us get back into the paid leave fight, because I think that's really, really critical for our state to figure out. We don't have enough nursing homes. We don't have enough senior housing. We don't have enough, medical care facilities.
They have dog treats, is that
Oh.
true? Can I grab this? Here's your space.
I think Betty did that too. So, that's why we were so interested in focusing on this. One other thing I'll just mention that we've done this past year and want to try to find ways to continue to facilitate is that senior housing piece I just mentioned. We announced a program and have been able to get about $60 million out the door, which was a low interest loan program that generally was focusing on economic development, but I wanted to prioritize housing as the top economic development issue. And it was really housing of all kinds, affordable housing, capital A, traditional affordable housing, housing that is affordable, like workforce housing, some market rate housing, some owner, able to purchase single family housing, and then senior housing. And we have been able to work through the Vermont Economic Development Authority to help a facility in Virgins that pre-pandemic was going to cost maybe $17 or $18 million. Pandemic put the project on hold. When they came back to build it, it cost $5 million more than pre-pandemic. And at the interest rates that exist now, the project wasn't penciling out from a financial standpoint with traditional commercial loans. But our program, we were able to come in at a low interest rate, 1 or 2% that we're lending to Vita, and they were able to pass that low rate down to the project developer. And the project was able to go forward. And it's going to be 64 new units of housing for middle and moderate income Vermonters. And that's really unusual for these kind of assisted living facilities as well. But we're really excited about that partnership and that opportunity in Virgins. But that's something that's on our radar, needing to find more opportunities for seniors to have housing, particularly low and moderate income seniors, that's safe and that has the medical care that's necessary, and even independent living as well. There just needs to be more places for seniors. And I say that because it's better for seniors, obviously, to be in a safe and secure place. But the other thing we're going to ask the developer and the assisted living facility manager to look at is, where are people moving from? Because our theory is those 65 new units mean that all of a sudden there are dozens and dozens of houses that are now opened up in Addison County because individuals have moved out of their big multiple bedroom home into the assisted living facility, or there's new rentals that are available, or there's just all of a sudden these units throughout the county that are available for young families and young individuals to move into. So I think that, again, is going to be something not just in a year-to-year basis, but over the next decade, something we're going to have a lot of focus on, because we are getting older, our workforce is getting older. And as Vermonters start to retire and not necessarily leave Vermont, they retire in Vermont, or they retire partially here and somewhere else, they're not freeing up their home. As people leave the workforce without freeing up a home, how are we going to add somebody to the workforce unless we build more housing for them?
Right.
So we have to build more housing, and we have to find housing for seniors to downsize that is appropriate, for their circumstances.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it's a big issue. And this is one small step that we've taken in our office, but we want to try to find ways to continue to support financially and otherwise that kind of housing development.
I noticed there was, I'm sorry, somebody from Cathedral Square on here, and I was wondering how long the current wait list is for Because I help people apply all the time and I'm sure it's pretty long.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Again, this is Molly Dugan with Cathedral Square. And it's great to have you here as well. Treasurer Pichek, we actually hosted the treasurer recently to one of our housing sites in the new North End. That was great. So we do have a long wait list for Cathedral Square. Cathedral Square has about 1,300 apartments and homes for older adults and those with disabilities. And we have close to that same exact number on our wait list. And we've been around over 40 years. So it's taken us over 40 years to build the number of housing units that now we have number of on the wait list for. And it takes roughly, 3 to 5 years to get into our housing. And it's really challenging when the people on your wait list are older Vermonters whose needs are really imperative. And I just wanted to also add that, and I want to thank Chair Wood and Representative Noyes, especially on the Human Services Committee, the knowing about the importance of the services going along with the housing, especially for older adults. And they've been so supportive of that under the leadership of Chair Wood. So we're really, feel fortunate that there is that deep understanding of the need for both housing and services for older adults.
Not to mention, we're bringing more people to the state as well. We can find housing for them.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, look at our data around just sort of our population, right? Over the last decade, the number of births that we've had in Vermont, our birth rate has been going down, and our deaths every year have been going up. And it's just indicative of a state that's getting older. But not only are we getting older, but we're not keeping up with the birth rate. So our natural population, all of a sudden, a few years ago, crossed this sort of point where we were losing population. And, we could reverse that on the birth rate, but, we're getting older, and that fatality rate is going to continue to be, elevated. So if we don't have a natural increase in our population, then the only way we're going to maintain or grow our population is from inbound migration from outside of our state. And we saw a lot of that following the pandemic. And that's in part what has led to this serious shortage of housing in Vermont, as people moved here with their jobs more likely than not based on the incomes they have. And it caused housing prices to escalate, it caused the inventory to dwindle. And on the one hand, that's a really good thing because we want people to move here, and they added to our tax revenues, and you can see our personal income tax numbers grow and other revenues grow. But the second part of that story is we need to make sure we're maintaining our housing stock and growing that.
What are the primary impediments to building that housing for moderate income folks, lower income folks? Is it Act 250? Is it financing? Is it the profit margin that you can get off of those things? All of those together,
So I think land use has been an issue, and land use just broadly, whether it's Act 250 or local zoning, has been something that's often cited as a challenge. That's something that's been around for quite some time. Something that's more acute now is the high interest rate environment.
Sure.
It's also with those services that does cost quite a bit. So trying to find that margin with, how much money you can charge someone that's low, moderate, and how much federal Medicaid would pick up.
Yeah.
And then still trying to maintain those services at that price point, particularly in a high interest rate environment, is a challenge.
Yeah.
There's another project. It wasn't this project, but another one that we supported. This one was delay in Virgins they attribute that to the pandemic and the uncertainty of the pandemic. Yeah. But there's another project in Putney that we supported, like $800,000 or $1 million, but they were being held up from Act 250 litigation. It was affordable housing unit in Putney, like 25 units, right near the co-op, right near the interstate, perfect for workforce to get to Brattleboro or get to Bells Falls. And that was a small group of neighbors that don't even live near the affordable housing unit that held it down in litigation for multiple years. Mm-hmm. So when their multiple year delay happened, all of a sudden it cost them $1 million more. Right. And the interest rates are where they are privately, commercially, and the project was not going to be able to go forward. So coming in at that point and helping them get over the finish line is great, but it'd be even better if our money could have been used to fund a new project, right? Instead of closing that gap. So I think it's land use. That's always been a challenge that we need to, and the legislature's working on that. And then this particular moment in time, the high cost of materials and capital is a challenge.
And we also have to really look at how we scale down these projects for more rural parts of the state, like some of these smaller towns, people, that's where their social connections are. So that's really hard to do when you look at economies of scale, and, you know, it really is more efficient to build larger units. But if you're up in Bulkhead or up in Craftsbury, where, you know, a smaller unit would be better, 6, 8, you know, how do we remove barriers to that type of development so that people will move back out of their house way up on East Hill, where, you know, there's not the transportation and the upkeep on the home is more than they can actually take care of now, and open that home up for somebody else who wants to buy a old farmhouse or something like that out in the middle of nowhere. So, you know, we really got to look at the barriers to that type of development as well, which is more expensive in some situations for sure.
I think one of the overall challenges is how do we make the cost of building housing less expensive in Vermont, right? So some of that's land use, but some of that is our scale of our size, as Representative Noyes points out. I mean, when the VHFA, the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, looks at the projects that they're financing, they see this sort of break point at 80, 100 units, where all of a sudden the cost per unit starts to come down. So oftentimes in Vermont, the projects are 20 or 30 or 40, and that's like the most expensive size cost per unit. So we're spending $500,000 for a single unit because, you know, the extra cost of adding another couple floors or expanding out are pretty marginal relative to all of the base core infrastructure that we need. So if we're not going to have a 100-unit facility, how else can you do that? And, you know, I think there is an opportunity with pre-manufactured housing to think about having a contract where we have a contract for 300 units, and all those 300 units aren't going in one place. They might be going in multiple communities at, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 units at a time, but we're getting the scale of purchasing it with a contract for multiple hundreds. So we have one small pilot that we're looking at in Brattleboro where it's mass timber. So it's a new type of material, and they're starting with 5 units, and they hope to have like 150 units in Brattleboro with this type of product. And the hope is that it could be eventually not just built here, but the product could be finished in Vermont, and that we could produce it at a larger scale. There's some interesting things to explore there to try to bring down the cost and build at scale, even if we are at the same time trying to support smaller communities through that scale.
Someone else has concerns.
Evan.
Oh, yeah.
What do you anticipate as perhaps possibilities for housing units for the currently unhoused? I mean, we're in an interesting situation. Lieutenant Governor shared that we have the second highest rate of home ownership. At the same time, we have the second highest rate of homelessness. And there's a real tension between bringing new units online for moderate, middle, currently housed people or people looking for housing, and the immediate need for the unhoused.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the second highest rate of homelessness in the country, you know, we had a forum last summer to look at that.
It's an excellent forum.
Well, thank you.
And people should contact you for the PDFs for that.
Yeah, the PDFs and the video are on our website.
Yeah.
So we had a professor called, his name is Greg Colburn, and he wrote a book called Homelessness as a Housing Problem. And it's sort of the stuff we talked about a little bit, but in communities that see, he looked at all the communities across the country, different metropolitan areas, and examined why do certain communities have higher rates of homelessness than others. And is it because they have better benefit structure, so people are attracted to them? Is it because the weather's nicer, so people go there? Is it because the communities are poorer, so they just have more homelessness in their community? And basically all of those reasons did not factor in. There was no correlation between those reasons and then the rates of homelessness in various communities across the country. But the two things that did correlate, that when you saw these two factors, you saw higher rates of homelessness, were the lower vacancy rates and higher median rents. So the less rent, less vacancy, less, units that you have in your community, obviously that's going to drive the cost up, but the less units you have and the higher your median cost is, the more homelessness that you have in that community, because you just don't have enough housing for people to go around. And his point, which I think is a great one, is if all of us sort of did a game of musical chairs and there were 10 seats and 10 of us, and we went around and we all got a chair, but then the next round we took a chair away and one of the individuals that was playing had a knee replacement and they were on crutches, and the game went and that person didn't get a seat, and we interviewed them afterward and said, what happened? They say, well, I'm slow. I'm getting this knee replaced. I'm on crutches. And so they would attribute it to those sort of vulnerabilities, but when you look at it more broadly, it's really because we didn't have enough chairs. So I think oftentimes we attribute homelessness to these vulnerabilities that people experience, and there could be a whole host of them. But at the end of the day, we just don't have enough housing units to house everybody. So it doesn't answer your question, because building housing units takes a long time, right? It's not fast. Again, it's part of the reason we have to get our land use regulations right, because we do want to make that process as quick as we can. And I think you do have to have transition housing. The legislature has been good at building in requirements for in taking in someone that's been unhoused previously, if it's sort of not the LIHEAP program, but the VHIP program. Thank you. So you get certain incentives from the state, but in getting those incentives, you're required to find someone that's been previously unhoused to come in as your tenant. So those are all strategies to employ, but at the end of the day, we need more housing to solve that crisis.
Has anyone ever looked in, I've seen a few articles on the printed houses?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 3D printed. Yeah, they're doing it in Maine. And their first prototype, I think, was like $3 or $4 million, but that was the one. They're hoping that they get it down.
They have, an article I was reading how they had smaller units, and I think they were using them because of one of the hurricanes or something like that.
Well, that's sort of what we're talking about, though, like that pre-manufactured home and the mass timber. It's, it's not like printed on site, but it's sort of, done.
Built, and then they bring it on a
they sort of
flatbed. We have a relative that has a prefabbed home, and it's, great.
Yeah.
You'd never know it.
Yeah, you never know it. And it's not just single family homes. They can do multifamily buildings as well. I mean, it's quite getting more and more sophisticated. And in a place like Vermont, you can do that kind of manufacturing year round instead of on the job site where it's weather dependent, how much progress you
It's done inside of facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have like 10 minutes left before we have to go over on the floor. But I just wanted to kind of go back to some of the questions that Charlie sent over to me earlier. And one of them that it'd be great to just hear people just kind of popcorn. What does success look like for older Vermonters in 10 years? Like, what could the legislature do 10 years? What could we have done? And then what would success look like to make Vermont the best place to grow old in?
I think transportation wise, how would it be to have like a one rail system through Vermont and kind of like start eliminating the road system?
Yeah.
How that would look economically, how efficient that would run.
Yep.
Maybe safe there, I think. But I don't know if any
Access to transportation, definitely, bring it out.
Like that.
It's just amazing to me how many of these things touch on the housing, the availability of the housing. And so to me, 10 years from now, if we have gotten on top of this housing issue, and there are opportunities for people whose kids have now left and they don't need the big house any longer, but they're strapped with that house and can't really move to something smaller because it's actually more expensive than the house they've got.
Right. Yeah. He's talking about us.
I have a friend. But so many things touch on the housing and then your ability to get from your house to someplace else. So the intersection between housing and transportation.
Yeah.
So to me, it's 10 years from now, we're on top of the housing issue.
Okay.
And the older we get, the more health issues we have.
Yeah.
And medical is way too expensive. So, somehow finding a discount price for people that really need the help, that's not just going to the doctors because they have a cut finger or whatever. Like with me, I just went through cancer and I had to take my vacation time because my job doesn't offer short-term disability. So, and now they're saying I need to get a hysterectomy because the cancer could come back. But I don't have the time on my job to take that time off and get paid to get that hysterectomy. So I'm in a no-win situation.
Yeah.
Because they don't offer short-term disability at where I work. And I don't have that much vacation time because they want me to take a month off. And I don't have that much time to take off in a year at my work.
Yeah.
So the doctors are saying, get it done now so the cancer don't come back. And I'm saying I can't because I can't take that much time off. And so I'm like, kind of playing with my health issues because it's not offered.
Yeah, no
No
doubt.
pay is offered to me.
Care is definitely something that we're constantly talking about.
And that's
I also,
the reason they leave too.
I
Yeah.
also say that doctors are getting overwhelmed with all the patients they have, so they're looking out for a very long time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's another issue with having
The capacity.
there to do the
Yep.
work, the
Yeah.
medical work.
Yep.
So,
Luba, I see you on line. You'll have to unmute. You'll have to unmute, Luba. We can't hear you. Maybe try the space bar. Sometimes that works.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go. We got you.
Yeah, this is for Michael Pichek. Michael Pichek, we don't know each other, except we run into each other while he's having bagels and coffee.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping you're going to move across the street from us. I have a request from you to think about caregivers who are caring for seniors who have chronic degenerative diseases. I would love to see a rebate in our state taxes for the caregivers. I think we are driving many people who are caregivers, first of all, out of their minds. And second of all, we're driving them into poverty. And we're paying more money for hospitalizations. We're paying more money for social workers, care workers. But we as caregivers do run out of money for respite, nursing homes, all kinds of things that we had not planned for. So I would really like to see, I'm not asking for any money, I'm asking for some money back so I can do more of it. So how about a rebate?
Okay.
Amen.
Yeah, we've talked about caregiver support, definitely, and the dementia respite grant for one of the key things that in human services that we recommended to the appropriations committee that needs to have a little bit more funding in it. It's been kind of level funded, so. Then Brumstead.
If I think out 10 years, the other piece would be more options for adult children who are intellectually disabled and want to live either in groups with other similar adult children or have opportunities to be in community. And that is a big problem. We have funded 3 pilots and they haven't gotten started yet, but I hear regularly from folks who feel as if, maybe their spouse has died and now they're getting older and older and they're worried about what's going to happen to their child who is so severely disabled. I hope in 10 years we have that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're gonna have to go back to the floor because we start at 1 o'clock and that gives us enough time to walk over there. But thank you, everybody, for coming today
Thank
and
you.
coming to the Older Vermonters Caucus. And thank you to AARP for bringing us lunch right on. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got one.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Round of applause for.
Sure that Mike is appropriately attired going out in this nasty weather there.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer. Thank you. Everyone.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, yes.
Thank you.